The evening started like any other for Marcus Johnson. He straightened his black tie and adjusted his white shirt as he prepared for another busy Friday night at the Silver Spoon, one of Chicago's most popular restaurants. At 26, Marcus had worked as a waiter for almost 6 years now. The job helped pay his bills while he saved for college, hoping to finish his criminal justice degree someday. "Marcus, you got tables 7 through 12 tonight," said Diane, the floor manager, handing him the tablet for taking orders. "It's going to be busy, so stay sharp." Marcus nodded and took a deep breath. The restaurant was already filling up with the usual weekend crowd, couples on dates, business people making deals, and families celebrating special occasions. He moved between tables with practiced ease, taking orders and delivering food with a warm smile that customers appreciated. Around 8 p.m., a new group was seated at table 9 in his section. Marcus walked over with water and menus, immediately noticing something unusual. There were two men in expensive suits and a teenage girl who looked about 16. The men appeared to be in their 40s, too old to be her brothers, and the way they positioned themselves on either side of her seemed strange. "Good evening and welcome to the Silver Spoon. My name is Marcus, and I'll be your server tonight," he said, placing water glasses on the table. One of the men, with slicked back hair and a thick gold watch, did all the talking. "We'll have 3 steaks, medium rare, and a bottle of your best red wine." Marcus noticed the girl didn't speak. She kept her eyes down, her hands slightly shaking. When the man wasn't looking, she glanced up at Marcus with fear in her eyes. "And for the young lady? Would she perhaps prefer something else?" Marcus asked, trying to get her to speak. "She'll have the steak," the second man said firmly, cutting off any chance for her to answer. As Marcus wrote down the order, he noticed the girl's expensive clothes looked slightly wrinkled, as if she'd been wearing them for days. There was a small bruise near her wrist that she kept trying to hide with her sleeve. Working in downtown Chicago, Marcus had attended a community workshop about recognizing signs of human trafficking just 3 months earlier. The police officer who ran the session had emphasized paying attention to small details. People not allowed to speak for themselves, signs of control, physical marks, fearful behavior. Throughout the meal, Marcus kept a careful eye on table 9. The men ate heartily, drinking most of the wine themselves. The girl barely touched her food. When Marcus came to clear their plates, she purposely knocked her napkin to the floor. As he bent to pick it up, he saw something that made his heart race. She had scribbled "Hey LP" on the napkin with what looked like an eyeliner pencil. Marcus carefully folded the napkin and placed it in his pocket, maintaining his professional smile. "Would anyone care for dessert this evening?" "Just the check," said the man with the gold watch, not even consulting the others. Walking to the payment station, Marcus's mind raced. Was this really happening? What if he was wrong? But what if he was right and did nothing? He remembered the police officer's words. "Trust your instincts. It's better to be wrong and cause a minor inconvenience than to ignore a situation where someone needs help." Taking out his phone, Marcus texted his manager, "Need to talk urgently about table 9. Something's wrong." As he processed their payment, Marcus made a decision that would change many lives forever, including his own. He would not let these men leave with that girl without finding out who she was, and if she needed help. Marcus found his manager, Diane, by the kitchen entrance. Her eyes widened as he showed her the napkin with "Hey LPNE" written on it. "I think the girl at table 9 is in trouble," Marcus whispered. "Something isn't right about those men." Diane glanced over at the table. "Are you sure? Those guys look like they could be important business people." "That's just it. They're trying too hard to look normal, but the girl is terrified. She hasn't spoken once. Look at this." Marcus pointed out how the men positioned themselves to block the girl's exits. "Okay," Diane said after a moment. "I'll call the police, but keep serving them normally. Don't make them suspicious." Marcus returned to table 9 with the receipt. "Everything all set for you tonight, gentlemen?" he asked with a practiced smile while trying to make eye contact with the girl. "We're fine," said the man with the gold watch as he signed the receipt. "Let's go," he told his companion and the girl. Marcus noticed the girl hesitate slightly before standing. Her eyes darted around the restaurant as if looking for escape routes. "Actually," Marcus said quickly, "we have a special complimentary dessert for first-time visitors. It'll just take a minute to prepare." The man frowned. We don't have time for. It's our chef's famous chocolate lava cake, Marcus interrupted. It won executive dessert of the year. People come from all over just to try it. He could see the men weighing their options. Refusing might draw attention, but staying longer increased their risk. Fine, the gold watch man finally said. But make it quick. Marcus hurried to the kitchen. 2 chocolate desserts for table 9, highest priority, he told the chef, who looked confused but started preparing them anyway. Through the kitchen window, Marcus kept an eye on the table. The girl shifted uncomfortably in her seat. When one of the men checked his phone and whispered something to his partner, their faces grew tense. Back at the table, Marcus placed the desserts down. Enjoy our specialty, he said, deliberately taking extra time arranging the plates. The gold watch man checked his phone again. We need to go. Now, he said to his partner, standing up. But you haven't tried the dessert, Marcus said, blocking their path slightly. Move, the second man growled, pushing his chair back forcefully. Just then, the restaurant's front door opened, and 2 police officers walked in. Marcus felt relief wash over him as Diane directed them toward table 9. The men noticed the police immediately. The gold watch man grabbed the girl's arm. We're leaving through the back, he hissed. There's a problem with the back door, Marcus said, stepping into their path again. The alarm will sound if you open it. The second man reached inside his jacket. Marcus's heart pounded, fearing he might have a weapon. Marcus, step aside, came a firm voice. Officer Rivera, a regular at the restaurant, had approached without the men noticing. These men are leaving with this young woman, Marcus said calmly. She passed me a note asking for help. The girl's eyes widened with hope as the officers moved closer. This is ridiculous, the gold watch man said. This is our niece. Tell them, Sarah. The girl remained silent, her body trembling. Let's all just step outside and sort this out, Officer Rivera suggested, her hand moving to rest on her holster. The second man suddenly lunged forward, grabbing the girl and pulling her toward the kitchen. Run, he yelled to his partner. Marcus reacted without thinking. He stepped in their path and extended his foot. The man tripped, loosening his grip on the girl. She broke free and ran toward the officers. You'll regret this, the man snarled at Marcus as Officer Rivera handcuffed him. Within minutes, both men were in custody. The girl sat wrapped in a blanket, tears streaming down her face as she spoke quietly to a female officer. Diane approached Marcus, who was watching from a distance. The police say her real name isn't Sarah. They think she might have been missing for days. She squeezed his shoulder. You did good, Marcus. You might have saved her life. Marcus nodded, still processing what had happened. He had no idea that this was just the beginning of an extraordinary chain of events that would change his life forever. The police station buzzed with activity as Marcus sat on a hard plastic chair, answering Detective Wilson's questions for the 3rd time. His shift had ended 4 hours ago, but the night was far from over. And you're certain she wrote this herself? Detective Wilson asked, holding the napkin with Hey ALPME written on it in an evidence bag. Yes, sir. I saw her do it when the men weren't looking, Marcus replied, rubbing his tired eyes. In a room across the hall, the young girl spoke with a female officer and a social worker. Through the glass window, Marcus could see her looking less frightened now, though exhaustion lined her face. Mr. Johnson, we've identified the girl, Detective Wilson said, returning from a brief phone call. Her name is Sophia Reynolds. She was reported missing 3 days ago from the North Shore area. Marcus nodded, relieved she wasn't just another nameless victim. Will her parents come get her soon? Detective Wilson exchanged glances with his partner. Parent. Singular. Her father is on his way now, and this case just got a lot more complicated. Before Marcus could ask what that meant, the station's atmosphere suddenly changed. Officers straightened their postures, and the front desk scrambled into action as 3 black SUVs pulled up outside. 4 men in suits entered first, scanning the station with alert eyes. Then a tall man with silver-streaked dark hair walked in, his expensive suit unable to hide the worry on his face. That's William Reynolds, whispered a nearby officer to his colleague. The tech billionaire. Marcus's eyes widened. Everyone knew of Reynolds Technologies, the company that had revolutionized cybersecurity systems worldwide. Its founder was famously private, rarely appearing in public since his wife's death years earlier. William Reynolds spotted his daughter through the glass and rushed toward her room, barely acknowledging the police captain who approached him. "Mr. Reynolds, if we could brief you first," the captain began. "I need to see my daughter," Reynolds said firmly, his voice carrying across the station. The door opened and Sophia looked up. "Dad," she cried, running into her father's arms. The powerful businessman held his daughter tightly, his composed facade crumbling as he pressed his face into her hair. Marcus watched the reunion, feeling a strange mix of emotions. He was happy for Sophia but suddenly felt out of place in this drama involving one of the wealthiest families in America. "I should probably go," he told Detective Wilson, standing up. "Actually, Mr. Reynolds specifically asked to meet you when he arrives," the detective replied. "Me? Why would he?" "Mr. Johnson?" A security man in a dark suit approached. "Mr. Reynolds would like to speak with you now." Marcus was led to a private office where William Reynolds stood waiting. Sophia sat in a chair nearby, looking much younger wrapped in a police blanket. "Mr. Johnson," Reynolds said, extending his hand. "I understand you're the man who saved my daughter." Marcus shook his hand awkwardly. "I just did what anyone would do, sir." "No," Reynolds said firmly. "The police told me how those men nearly escaped, how you risked yourself to stop them." His voice grew thicker with emotion. "Most people would have looked the other way." Sophia spoke up. "He noticed something was wrong right away, Dad. The kidnappers have been so careful with everyone else." Marcus shifted uncomfortably under their grateful gazes. "I'm just glad you're safe now." "They were going to demand $50 million, Reynolds said quietly. "But this wasn't just about money. These men are part of a larger criminal organization that specializes in high-value kidnappings." A knock at the door interrupted them. Detective Wilson entered with a grim expression. "Mr. Reynolds, we've identified the men in custody. They're connected to 3 other kidnappings of wealthy families' children in the last year." "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "We keep Sophia protected until we're sure there's no additional threat," Reynolds answered. He turned to Marcus with an intense gaze. "Young man, I won't forget what you've done. My security team has arranged for your protection as well, just in case these criminals have associates." Marcus hadn't considered that he might be in danger too. The reality of what he'd involved himself in suddenly hit him. "Don't worry," Reynolds continued, noticing Marcus's expression. "I protect those who help my family. And speaking of which," he reached into his jacket pocket. "This is just the beginning of my gratitude." William Reynolds held out a business card to Marcus. It was simple black with silver text that read, "William Reynolds, personal," followed by a phone number. "This is my private line," Reynolds explained. "Very few people have this number. But I want you to call me tomorrow. We have things to discuss." Marcus took the card, feeling its heavy weight. "Thank you, sir, but that's not necessary." "It's not a request," Reynolds said firmly, though not unkindly. "What you did for Sophia can't be repaid with a simple thank you." Before Marcus could respond, Detective Wilson returned with news. "The kidnappers are refusing to talk, but we found something interesting in their car. They had detailed schedules of Sophia's movements for the past month, along with information about your security team, Mr. Reynolds." Reynolds' face darkened. "An inside job?" "Possibly. We're investigating everyone who has access to your family's schedules." After finishing at the police station, Marcus stepped outside into the early morning air. His apartment was just a 30-minute bus ride away, but a black SUV waited at the curb. "Mr. Johnson?" A security man opened the rear door. "Mr. Reynolds insisted we drive you home." Too tired to argue, Marcus climbed in. The luxury vehicle felt foreign to him. Smooth leather seats and complete silence as they drove through Chicago's streets. The security man didn't speak, and Marcus was left alone with his thoughts. When they reached his modest apartment building, the security man handed him a card. "We'll have someone watching your building for the next few days. Call this number if you notice anything unusual." Marcus barely slept that night. His small studio apartment, which had always felt comfortable, now seemed exposed and vulnerable. Every noise in the hallway made him jump. The next morning, his phone rang. It was Diane from the restaurant. "Marcus, have you seen the news?" she asked without greeting. He hadn't. Turning on his TV, Marcus was shocked to see his own face on the screen. The headline read, "Heroic Waiter Saves Billionaire's Daughter from Kidnappers." "They've been calling the restaurant all morning," Diane continued. "Reporters want interviews with you. The Reynolds family is all over the news." Marcus sank onto his couch. "I didn't want any of this attention." "Well, you've got it. Take the day off. Actually, take the week off with pay." Mr. Reynolds called the owner personally. After hanging up, Marcus avoided the windows where he spotted a news van parked outside. His phone kept ringing with unknown numbers, likely reporters who had somehow found his contact information. Around noon, he remembered the business card. Taking a deep breath, Marcus dialed the number. "Reynolds," answered a curt voice after one ring. "Mr. Reynolds, this is Marcus Johnson, from last night." "Marcus." The billionaire's voice softened. "Thank you for calling. How are you holding up with all the media attention?" "Not great, sir. They're outside my apartment." "I suspected that might happen. I'm sending a car for you in 30 minutes. Back enough for a few days." "Sir, I don't understand." "Marcus, those kidnappers were part of a larger organization. Until we know more, it's safer if you stay at my lake house. It's secluded and has top-notch security. Sophie is there now, recovering." Marcus hesitated. His simple life had suddenly become very complicated. "I can't just leave everything, Mr. Reynolds." "Your job is secured. I've spoken to your employer. And frankly, your apartment isn't safe with reporters exposing your location to anyone watching." Reynolds paused before continuing, his voice sincere. "Marcus, you're the reason my daughter is alive. Please let me ensure the same for you." Looking around his small apartment, Marcus realized he didn't have much keeping him there. His few close friends would understand. "All right," he finally agreed. "I'll be ready in 30 minutes. As he packed a small bag, Marcus had no idea he was about to enter a world he had only seen in movies, a world of wealth, power, and dangers he couldn't yet imagine. The helicopter descended toward what Reynolds had casually called his lake house. Marcus pressed his face against the window, amazed at the sprawling estate that appeared below them. The main house was a modern glass and stone structure set back from the shoreline of Lake Michigan, surrounded by manicured gardens and a dense forest that provided natural privacy. "This is your lake house?" Marcus asked, unable to hide his astonishment. Reynolds smiled slightly. "One of them. This one has the best security features." When they landed on a private helipad, a team of security personnel met them. Marcus noticed they all wore earpieces and moved with military precision. The head of security, a serious woman named Valerie Chen, greeted them. "Everything's secure?" Reynolds asked her. "Yes, sir. The perimeter is tight, and we've increased patrols after yesterday's incident," she replied, then turned to Marcus. "Mr. Johnson, welcome. We prepared the East Guest Suite for you." Inside the house, floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the lake. Modern furniture and priceless artwork decorated the space, but it still felt surprisingly comfortable. Marcus felt like he had stepped into another world. "Dad." Sophie came running down the grand staircase, looking much better than she had at the police station. She stopped when she saw Marcus. "You came." "Mr. Johnson will be staying with us for a while," Reynolds explained. "Marcus, please," Marcus corrected gently. "Mr. Johnson makes me feel old." Sophia smiled, the first real smile Marcus had seen from her. "Have you shown him around yet?" "Just got here," Reynolds said, checking his watch. "And I need to join a video conference in 10 minutes. Perhaps you could give Marcus the tour." After Reynolds excused himself, Sophia led Marcus through the house. She seemed eager to talk, perhaps needing normal conversation after her ordeal. "This place has 8 bedrooms, a movie theater, an indoor pool, and a gym," she explained as they walked. "Dad built it after Mom died. He said we needed a safe place away from everything." "I'm sorry about your mother," Marcus said gently. Sophia nodded, her expression momentarily sad. "Cancer. I was 12. After that, Dad became super protective and private. That's why those men were able to grab me. I was finally convincing Dad to let me have more freedom." They reached a large kitchen where staff prepared lunch. Sophia introduced Marcus to everyone, and he noticed how the staff genuinely seemed to care for her. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked as they sat down to eat. The police are investigating how those men knew so much about me, Sophia explained, her voice becoming quieter. Dad thinks someone close to us helped them. Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Your father mentioned they were part of a larger organization, a group that specializes in kidnapping wealthy families' children. Dad says they're very sophisticated. She looked down at her plate. I was so scared, Marcus. They said if my father didn't pay, they would. Her voice trailed off. Marcus reached out instinctively, then hesitated, unsure if the gesture was appropriate. Sophia completed the connection, grabbing his hand. You saved my life, she said firmly. I won't forget that. Their conversation was interrupted when Valerie Chen entered the kitchen, her expression serious. Marcus, Mr. Reynolds would like to see you in his office. Following Valerie through the house, Marcus felt a growing nervousness. What did the billionaire want to discuss? Reynolds's office was a large room with one wall entirely dedicated to computer screens. He stood looking at them intently as Marcus entered. Marcus, thank you for coming, Reynolds said, gesturing to a chair. I've been reviewing the police reports and security footage from the restaurant. He pressed a button, and one screen showed the moment Marcus had tripped the kidnapper. You acted without hesitation, Reynolds observed. That's rare. Marcus shrugged. I didn't really think. I just reacted. Reynolds studied him for a moment. That kind of instinct can't be taught. He sat down across from Marcus. I have a proposition for you, one that could change your life completely. Marcus shifted in his chair, suddenly aware of the expensive leather under his fingers and the important man sitting across from him. William Reynolds looked tired but determined, his eyes focused intensely on Marcus. A proposition? Marcus asked carefully. Reynolds nodded. I've spent the last 24 hours learning everything I could about you, Marcus Johnson. Everything. Marcus felt a flash of unease. You grew up in South Chicago with your grandmother after your parents died in a car accident when you were 8. You were an excellent student who earned a partial scholarship to Northwestern University. You completed 2 years studying criminal justice before you had to drop out when your grandmother got sick. Reynolds recited these facts without consulting any notes. Marcus swallowed hard. That's right. You've worked at the Silver Spoon for 6 years, been promoted 3 times, and according to your manager, you're the most reliable employee they have. Reynolds leaned forward. What your file doesn't explain is why someone with your potential is still waiting tables at 26. My grandmother's medical bills, Marcus explained simply. Even after she passed, the debt remained. I've been working to pay it off. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. And you're 3 payments away from being debt-free. Marcus stared in surprise. How did you? I make it my business to know things, Reynolds said with a small smile, especially about people who saved my daughter's life. He stood up and walked to the window overlooking the lake. Marcus, I'd like to offer you a job. A job? Doing what? Initially, personal security for Sophia. Eventually, with proper training, perhaps a larger role in my security department. Marcus blinked in surprise. But I don't have any security experience. You have instincts. You notice things others miss. You act decisively under pressure. Reynolds turned to face him. Those qualities are rare and valuable. The technical skills can be taught. Marcus shook his head in disbelief. This is unexpected. The starting salary would be $120,000 per year, plus benefits and housing on the estate during your training period. Reynolds said this casually, as if he weren't offering to multiply Marcus's current income by 4. That's very generous, but I'd also cover the remainder of your grandmother's medical debt and provide a scholarship for you to complete your degree while working for me. Marcus sat in stunned silence. It seemed too good to be true. Why me? He finally asked. You could hire former military or FBI agents. I have those people already, Reynolds replied. What I need now is someone Sophia trusts, someone who's already proven they'll put her safety above their own. He paused. She feels safe with you, Marcus. That's something I can't buy with all my billions. A knock at the door interrupted them. Sophia entered, carrying 2 cups of coffee. Sorry to interrupt, she said, but you both disappeared, and I thought you might need this. She handed the cups to them with a smile. Reynolds checked his watch. I actually have a call with Tokyo in 5 minutes. Perhaps you two can continue discussing the details without me. He gave Marcus a meaningful look before leaving. Once he was gone, Sophia sat in her father's chair. So, did he offer you the job? You knew about this? Sophia nodded. It was partly my idea. Dad wanted to give you money, but I told him you didn't seem like the type to just take a reward. She studied his face. Was I right? Marcus smiled slightly. You were. So, will you take it? I could really use someone normal around here. Everyone else treats me like I'm made of glass. Marcus looked around the luxurious office, then back at Sophia's hopeful face. His life had been a series of responsibilities and obligations since childhood. He never had the luxury of taking chances. It would mean leaving everything I know, he said quietly. Sophia leaned forward. Sometimes the best opportunities require exactly that. Marcus realized she was right. The question wasn't whether he could afford to take this chance. It was whether he could afford not to. I think, he said slowly, your father and I have more to discuss. 3 months passed quickly. The Reynolds estate became Marcus's new home as he underwent intensive security training. Each morning started before dawn with physical conditioning led by former military specialists. Afternoons focused on tactical driving, threat assessment, and close protection techniques. Evenings were dedicated to studying for his criminal justice classes, which he now attended online. Today marked a milestone, his first official day as Sophia's personal security detail without a supervisor watching his every move. Ready for your big day? Asked Valerie Chen, handing Marcus his new communication earpiece. As head of Reynolds Security, she had been skeptical of him at first, but gradually came to respect his progress. As ready as I'll ever be, Marcus replied, adjusting his suit jacket. The tailored clothes still felt strange after years of wearing waiter uniforms. Remember, today is just a shopping trip to Michigan Avenue, Valerie reminded him. Simple and controlled. The advance team has already secured the route and stores. Marcus nodded, reviewing the day's plan in his mind. This would be Sophia's first public outing since the kidnapping. Both he and Mr. Reynolds had concerns, but Sophia had insisted she needed to reclaim her normal life. Sophia bounded down the stairs, looking excited in jeans and a simple sweater. At 16, she could shift between appearing like a mature young woman and an eager child depending on her mood. Finally, freedom, she declared dramatically. Marcus smiled. Limited freedom. With me 3 steps behind you at all times. Better than being stuck here for another 3 months, she replied. Is Dad still coming to say goodbye? As if summoned, William Reynolds appeared from his office. He'd been different with Marcus lately, less the untouchable billionaire and more a concerned father who sometimes sought Marcus's input about Sophia's well-being. Everything set? Reynolds asked, his eyes showing the worry his voice concealed. Yes, sir. 2 advanced vehicles, counter-surveillance on parallel routes, and I'll be with her the entire time, Marcus assured him. Reynolds nodded, then surprised both of them by hugging Sophia tightly. Have fun, sweetheart, but stay close to Marcus. I will, Dad, she promised, hugging him back. The drive into Chicago gave Marcus time to observe how much Sophia had changed. The frightened girl from the restaurant had grown stronger through therapy and self-defense classes. She still had nightmares sometimes. Marcus had learned to recognize the signs of a difficult night, but she faced each day with determination. You're quiet, Sophia noted as they neared the city. Just focused, Marcus replied. She studied him. You're nervous about today? It's my first solo assignment. No, it's more than that. Sophia had become surprisingly perceptive about people's emotions. You're worried about me being in public again. Marcus smiled slightly. Maybe. Well, don't be. I refuse to live in fear forever, she said firmly. Besides, I have you now. Her simple trust made Marcus even more determined to protect her. Their shopping trip progressed smoothly. Marcus maintained professional distance while remaining vigilant, scanning each store for potential threats while Sophia browsed with friends who'd met them there. During lunch at an upscale restaurant, Sophia's phone buzzed. She checked it and her expression changed. What is it? Marcus asked immediately. A text from a number I don't recognize, she said, showing him the screen. It read, Still watching you, princess. Your black bodyguard can't protect you forever. Marcus's training kicked in. He signaled the backup team while moving Sophia toward the kitchen exit. "We're leaving now." "They know about you," Sophia whispered, her face pale. "How could they know?" "We'll figure that out later," Marcus said calmly, guiding her to their waiting vehicle. Back at the estate, William Reynolds reacted to the threat with cold fury. Security teams analyzed surveillance footage while cyber experts traced the message. Late that night, after Sophia had finally fallen asleep with additional guards posted, Reynolds found Marcus in the security room reviewing footage. "You did well today," Reynolds said quietly. "Getting her out quickly was exactly right." Marcus looked up at his employer. "But they still got to her. They knew about me. That means—" "We still have a leak," Reynolds finished his thought. "Someone close to us is feeding them information." The billionaire looked exhausted but determined. "I need someone I can absolutely trust, Marcus. Are you ready for that responsibility?" Marcus nodded slowly, understanding the weight of what was being asked. "Yes, sir, I am." Hashtag. 1 year had passed since the night Marcus Johnson first noticed a scared girl in the Silver Spoon restaurant. The changes in his life still amazed him sometimes. Today, he stood in the Reynolds Technologies headquarters, watching Sophia give a speech to launch the new Sentinel project. "Our foundation's mission is simple," Sophia said confidently to the crowd of reporters and business leaders. "We will train service workers across America to recognize signs of trafficking and abduction. The people who saved my life weren't police or security professionals. It was a waiter who noticed something wrong and took action." Marcus smiled from his position at the side of the stage. At 17, Sophia had become a powerful advocate, using her traumatic experience to help others. The Sentinel project had been her idea, but she had insisted Marcus help develop the training materials based on his experience. William Reynolds stepped to the microphone next. "Today, we're announcing a $5 million initial investment in this program, which will provide free training to restaurants, hotels, and transportation workers nationwide." The crowd applauded as Reynolds continued. "I'd also like to introduce the director of this initiative, the man who saved my daughter's life and has since become an invaluable member of our security team, Marcus Johnson." Marcus walked to the podium, still not entirely comfortable with public attention, but driven by the project's importance. "Thank you, Mr. Reynolds. 1 year ago, I was just a waiter doing my job. I noticed something wrong because I'd received training through a community program. Our goal is to expand that training to reach 1 million workers in the next 3 years." After the presentation, as security escorted the Reynolds family to their waiting cars, Marcus received a message on his secure phone. It was from Valerie Chen. "We go time." Marcus's pulse quickened. For months, they had been hunting for the inside source who had been feeding information to the kidnapping ring. The investigation had required patience and careful planning, with Marcus playing a central role in feeding controlled information to suspected leaks. At the secure Reynolds estate, Valerie briefed them in the command center. It was Gregory Wells, from the accounting department. He had gambling debts and was approached by the organization 2 years ago. He started with small information, travel schedules, security rotations, and eventually helped plan Sophia's abduction. "Where is he now?" Reynolds asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. "In FBI custody, and he's talking," Valerie replied. "His information has already led to arrests in 3 cities. The entire network is coming down." Sophia looked at Marcus, relief washing over her face. "It's really over?" Marcus nodded. "It's over." Later that evening, Reynolds invited Marcus to his private study, something that had become more common in recent months. The billionaire poured 2 glasses of scotch and handed one to Marcus. To closing a chapter, Reynolds said, raising his glass. They drank in comfortable silence before Reynolds spoke again. "You've exceeded every expectation, Marcus. You've not only protected Sophia but helped her heal. You've completed your degree. You designed a program that will save countless lives." "Thank you, sir," Marcus said simply. "I'd like to offer you a new position," Reynolds continued. "Head of Personal Security Operations. You'd oversee protective details for my family and key executives, with a substantial team under your direction." Marcus was stunned. "That's Valerie's job." "Valerie is becoming Chief Security Officer for the entire company. She recommended you as her replacement for the Personal Security Division." Reynolds smiled slightly. she said, and I quote, "He sees things others miss." Looking out the window at the lakeshore where he now regularly went running with Sophia as part of her protection routine, Marcus reflected on how completely his life had transformed. "There's one more thing," Reynolds added. "Sophia wants you to accompany her on a college tour next month. She trusts you more than anyone." Marcus nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose. From a waiter noticing a scared girl to the protector of one of America's most important families, his journey had been extraordinary. But what gave him the most satisfaction wasn't the salary or position. It was knowing that through the Sentinel Project, waiters and hotel workers across the country would be empowered to do exactly what he had done that night at the Silver Spoon. "I'd be honored to accept the position," Marcus said, raising his glass to Reynolds, "and to continue protecting what matters most."